This Saturday, boxing will see two upcoming contenders in the light heavyweight division take on one another to see who will get the right to fight for a world title sometime early 2024. The two men in question, number 1 rated and number 2 rated, Joshua Buatsi and Dan Azeez, from the UK, the O2 Arena in Greenwich. This is going to be a top caliber fight between two men who have marched toward obtaining a title shot. They are familiar with one another. They are friends of one another. So this is going to be one of those fights that you can bet you better tune in for, because something interesting is going to take place. Let's talk about Buatsi versus Azeez. As I have stated previously, 2023 has been action-packed, full of the type of competition, competitive bouts that the boxing public loves to see. And this Saturday, October 21st, live from the O2 Arena, will be no different, as Joshua Buatsi and Dan Azeez meet one another in the ring. These two men are coming to get at each other for the right to fight for a world title. And the most interesting aspect of this is they are quite familiar and they are friends. They have sparred numerous times in rounds in the gym. They know of one another from youth, and now it's strictly business. Buatsi, who's coming into this fight after a little bit of a layoff. I mean, he had a fight in May of this year against Power Stepien, but prior to that, he hadn't fought since May of 2022, where he defeated Craig Richards in a unanimous decision. On the other hand, Dan Azeez, who has gone about things in a workmanlike fashion, has had 2 fights this year already. In July, he faced Khalid Gradia, and he won a points decision there. And in March of this year, he took on Thomas Faur. Now, this is the thing about the two men. Buatsi had some promotional problems, and he was formerly with Matchroom Boxing, and he had gotten out of that deal, and now he's signed up with Boxer, with Ben Shalom. I believe that Buatsi had been ascending toward becoming a pretty darn good fighter. And then suddenly there was something that I noticed. The learning curve seemed to stop. Now, why is that the learning curve stopped for Buatsi? He was being trained by Virgil Hunter. I'm not certain if Hunter is still his coach, but there were aspects to his game that I kind of questioned. I noticed that in some of his last fights, he wasn't throwing a complete arsenal of punches. He was looking to wade in and just slug, where initially he was operating behind a jab and then opening up with power punches. An orthodox fighter, Buatsi is, and he is the type of fighter that wants to fight from medium range to distance, and he likes to load up with power punches. That could be a problem facing against Dan Azeez. And not only is Azeez familiar with Buatsi, he knows that he can get in there and fight on the inside. Azeez is 34 years of age. Buatsi is 30. Dan Azeez is the type of fighter that you would consider a throwback. He operates behind a high guard. He has a full arsenal of punches, and he looks to work and wear his opponents down. Workmanlike, the old school label that he has is so familiar that he looks like his idol, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, in there. He's an orthodox fighter. His record is 20-0 with 13 KOs. He comes complete with the maroon trunks, the high socks, the high guard, and he looks to get on the inside and go to work against his opponents. Buatsi counters that with a record of 17-0 and 13 KOs. And the two men, their styles should blend perfectly as they offset one another. Azeez likes to get close. Buatsi likes to stay at a certain range and distance. But he will wade in and wage war, and he gets reckless. But Azeez, who is almost like computer-like, he goes in there and he breaks his opponents down with a succession of certain punches that build toward getting someone out of there. He's not a slugger, but he works hard. There's not a lot of head movement from Azeez. He's a little stiff and upright, but he does keep his guard up, and he looks to come in and just pound. He'll work behind a stiff jab. Sometimes he even switches over to southpaw, though he's not that he's fighting out of the southpaw stance. It's just that his balance takes him that way, and he's effective. I believe he studied a lot of his, the guy that he likes, Marvin Hagler, and he tries to fight like Hagler. The only thing about Azeez is that chin being right there and not off center line, but he's a tough customer, and he seems to counterpunch very well. He's very clean and precise with his shots, and Buatsi doesn't have the best upper body movement himself, and he can get caught. And there's another thing about Buatsi where he gets reckless and he'll give his opponents opportunities. I recall when he was fighting Rickard Bolotniks, and Bolotniks landed some shots, but he still ended up getting Bolotniks out of there. And there was some things that he just didn't do in that fight. Like, I was calling for him to use a greater arsenal of his punches, and he wasn't able to do that. Against Craig Richards, he absolutely barely didn't throw any left hooks at all. And Richards was open for left hooks. He boxed Buatsi very well and took him into places where Buatsi was very, very uncomfortable. Now, if Richards couldn't do that, Azeez, who is a little bit of a tougher customer and a little more aggressive, will take full advantage of Buatsi. Sometimes when friends are put in a position to face one another in a boxing match, it brings out a darker side of things that are in the men. And that could definitely happen in this fight. These two guys will probably not be the same type of friends after this fight is done. I believe the two of them are going to put on a fierce battle. And I expect something interesting to happen, like a knockdown or something of that nature. Because this is what they're going to bring. They're not going to be nice to each other in there. And Azeez has a bit of a chip because he feels that the Buatsi camp picked him as a easy picking for his last fight of 2023. And there's a bit of disrespect that he feels in that. Their feature, the gloves are off, saw the two men sitting down, talking about their history, talking about what inspires and motivates them. And I can tell that both men have a different type of approach to wanting to be world champion. And that contrast will also make for an interesting fight. As I'm looking at it closer and closer, I do believe I'm going to have to pull for Dan Azeez. There's something about the old school fighter, man. And Joshua Buatsi, the inactivity was going to catch up to him against a man who is more purposeful and dutiful about his line of work. But either way, this is going to be a good one. And I recommend that nobody miss it, because when you talk about top fighters facing one another, this is what you get. Two men who want to be champion. This is Stormy B-Man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Tune in to Buatsi versus Azeez and let me know what your thoughts are about these two fighters. I think it's going to be a barn burner, and these two are really going to go at it to prove who's the better man. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.